Hi everyone, welcome to our small footprint. Today's video we did pineapple. So I bought 15 pineapples from the fruit and veg store when I did my 6-weekly grocery run. They were $1 each, 3 for $3, so $15 worth of pineapple, and I had many plans for them, and then we got COVID and everyone was sick. So I haven't had a chance to get to them, and I was really concerned about them going bad before I could use them. And even though they were cheap, I can't always buy pineapple. Like it can be hard to get, so I really wanted to use them. So we really like pineapple cordial or squash, whatever you want to call it, wherever you are. We use it with our soda stream. So we have a 6.5 kilo gas bottle for our soda stream that hooks up with an adapter, and that way we don't have to buy the small refill bottles that are quite expensive and would be like having to go and get them all the time. So we have a large bottle attached to it, and we use it a lot, especially in summer. Darryl's not a huge water drinker, so he prefers something sweet, and I like the bubbles because I find it refreshing. I drink an awful lot of water, so when I'm not drinking water, I like something with the bubbles with a bit of ice, just because it's a refreshing sort of a flavour. We're not alcohol drinkers either. I suppose if we drank beer or something, then that would be something that would go in the place of it, but other than making our fermented ginger beer, we don't generally drink much in the way of alcohol or anything like that. So SodaStream is our thing, and I make all sorts of cordials, berry cordials. I did apple berry when we had a whole bunch of apple peels. I do the pineapple, I do a ginger lemon, a bunch of them, but I really wanted to get the pineapple done. So today I worked on the pineapples. So 15 pineapples turned into pineapple chunks and pineapple cordial and canned. So enjoy watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will see you again next time. Thanks, guys. First task today was to get these pineapples processed. I was really happy that the pineapples had lasted well over this time while I was sick and stuff. I was a bit concerned that some of them might have gone bad in that time, and a few of them had a couple of bits of bruising or some discoloration around the cores or things like that, but they were all well and truly usable, which was great. So what I decided to do was to just freeze these pieces and make pineapple cordial. The main reason for purchasing them was for the pineapple cordial. I still have a dozen or more jars of canned pineapple on the shelf for pizza, and that's about the only thing that we use it for. So I don't really need any more canned pineapple, so I'm just going to freeze it. Also, I still wasn't feeling fantastic, so I wanted fairly simple. So what I did was I rough cut them. So the cores and the peel are going to be used for cordial, so I don't have to worry about wastage with that. So I can just slice the peel off quite thick, not worry about having to sit there and cut eyes out or anything like that of the flesh, and just roughly take all the skin, all the cores off. I did discard a few bits and pieces that just were a bit bruised or yuck, and they went to the animals, but most of it is usable for both purposes, which is the whole point of doing it like this. And once I peeled them and cut the actual flesh off, I just sliced it into lengths and stuck it in a bowl so that I could do whatever I wanted to do with that later. As I said, I think I'll freeze it, and then once it's frozen I can always use it for other things if I want. Like there's really nice like hummingbird cakes and that have pineapple in them, but it'd be nice in smoothies. I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it. So once I've got all the peels and cores and that, what I do is I use my Thermomix to grind it up. You can use any sort of food processor, or you could just rough cut it yourself, but the more surface area you have, the more juice and flavour you're going to get out of these items. So by putting it through the Thermomix, I'm mincing most of it into these tiny little pieces, which means I'm going to get the most out of it that I possibly can. It takes multiple batches, because if you overfill the jug, then it gets a bit caught and it's not mincing it, it's just moving it around the bowl instead of cutting it up. So I did it in many multiple batches and just kept on filling the pot with the sort of minced pureed cores and skins as I did them to fill that pot up with. Once I had it all done, you add a bit of water. I'll link the recipe in the bottom, but you add a bit of water to the pot, and this is going to add a bit more liquid and stop anything burning. Some lemon rind, which I had some in the freezer that I had frozen when I processed all my lemons last, and lemon juice. I think it was from 3 or 4 lemons or whatever it worked out to be. So I have these giant ice cubes of frozen lemon juice in the freezer as well, so I grabbed them out. And then citric acid or tartaric acid or a mix of both. And the ratios, again, I'll put the recipe down below. So I think this recipe ended up quadrupled maybe, so I used the relevant amount of citric acid in that required for it, and then put it back on the heat to simmer and steep. While that was steeping on the stove, I pulled the trays of frozen fruit out of the freezer that I already had. So these already had bananas on them, so I stuck the bananas in Ziploc bags to go back in the freezer for smoothies and stuff, and put the pineapple out instead. We did try starting out to get it all nice and neat and even and, you know, laid out so that they wouldn't be touching and be easier to pull apart when they're frozen, but I don't have a whole lot of freezer room at the moment, so in the end I just piled it up on the trays and ruined all Sonnet's good work. But we stuck it on 2 trays worth and got them in the freezer to freeze up for using for other things. Once the pulp had come up to a simmer and I left the lid on it for a couple of hours to steep as well, we got to strain it. So I bought these gorgeous flour sack tea towels off Amazon. I'm going to link them below because I really like them. They were $60 odd for 24 of them, but well worth it. I use them for straining everything, as well as just as tea towels. I think these are wonderful. They're a giant size and they're just well worth the cost. I had seen them used in American videos and decided to try splurging on them and see if they worked. They definitely work for a myriad of things. So once I strained out all the pulp, so you have to just squeeze as much liquid as you possibly can from it all, and then once you've done that you have to measure out how much liquid you're left with. So once I strained it all, I measured how much liquid was there. I ended up with about 13 cups of liquid from the 15 pineapples done this way. And then the recipe states 1 cup of sugar per cup of liquid. I did about 10 cups of sugar to 13 of liquid. I have issues with using too much sugar. It's, you know, a bit of an issue for me, but I have tried to reduce the sugar in this recipe before and it's not great. So it definitely needs a high ratio of sugar, and this 10 to 13 is what I did this particular time. And then you want to stir the sugar back in and stick it back on the heat and bring it back up to a simmer for 5 minutes to melt that sugar through the liquid and turn it into the syrup that you're after. You don't need to boil it, it just needs to come up enough to dissolve the sugar and make it all nice and uniform and work properly. Once I'd done that, I filled the jars. So I'm just using ghee jars here, 1 litre jars, and I filled all the jars with the Cordial. I got quite a few jars out of it. We go through this fairly quickly though. We use it with SodaStream. Darryl's not much of a water drinker, so he prefers to drink flavoured drinks pretty much all the time. So we have SodaStream to make carbonated water, and we add this to that for drinking. So you don't use very much at a time, but it still goes through it fairly quickly. I used white vinegar on the rims because the Cordial is quite sticky, so you want to make sure that the rims are nice and clean, and that nothing's going to get in the way of sealing. And then I used my lug lids on it. So I use brand new lug lids when I use the secondhand jars. I do sometimes use secondhand lids if I have some that look really good, especially on something that it doesn't really matter if it fails and I can just stick in the fridge and use, but we're really low on fridge room at the moment as well. So I wanted to make sure that these would work, so I used brand new lids with these to make sure that they were going to seal well. And then I used them in the steam canner. So the steam canner is really great because it uses less water. It's a water bath equivalent canner, so you still can only do things that you would water bath in it, but it uses a whole lot less water because you're only filling underneath the plate in the canner. So you fill underneath the rack full of water, and then you put the lid on it and then you put it on the heat. Now you don't want too high heat. This is aluminium, so it heats up quite quickly. There's not a whole lot of water in there, so you have to remember that. If it gets too high, it's going to wobble around a lot, so you need to get the heat the right way. And then you've got this dial on the top that tells you the different zones, and it tells you in the book for your altitude which zone you need to be in and maintain at. So for me, it needs to be the dark green zone, the 3rd zone. So I have to bring it up to that 3rd zone spot and then hold it in that 3rd zone spot for the same equivalent time as you water bath can something. And that ends up being the equivalent of water bathing it, but without having to submerge the jars. So for only these 4 jars, so I got 4 full jars and a not quite full jar. The not quite full jar I stuck in the fridge. These 4 jars here, to the amount of water that would be required if I stuck them in my Presto or a pot and covered them with water, would be quite high. So the steam canner is perfect for small jobs like this. So I process them for the relevant time, and then you turn it off, you let it sit for 5 minutes, take the lid off, and they're done as per normal. So that's what I did with my pineapples. These were 15 pineapples that I got for $15, and I have 2 full trays of frozen pineapple in the freezer, as well as 4.5 litres of pineapple cordial. Thank you for joining me again today, and I will see you again next time.